The new season of Oshi No Ko keeps delivering banger after banger on every episode, and this Tokyo Blade arc really plays to the series' strengths so well. I'm really happy this got an adaptation, and dare I say, it's even better than the source material. We start the episode with Ruby sending out a bat signal to remind people that she's still here, she still exists, which I think it's cute when she pretends to be a main character, as both the girls and the boys are here for Aqua. Who needs a cute, energetic, klutz main character that has stunted emotional growth when you have an edgy boy that really gaslights himself into believing that he's doing all of this for revenge, when in fact he's in as much love with the entertainment industry as every other character. I just love edgy characters that think they're special, and so I have a soft spot for Aqua. We move on to a cute scene between Aqua and Akane, and I love this scene because of the stupid amount of detail they spent on the drinks. This show loves to flex its beauty, whether it's characters with their climax-inducing eyes or simply just drinks. That's the level we are operating at, folks. This new generation is so cooked with their attention span that every shot must be must-see. All jokes aside, I really enjoyed this scene even in the manga because as someone not from Japan, I didn't know what 2.5D theater was. It's awesome that I, and I assume a lot of the viewers, get to self-insert on Aqua. Which is a weird phrasing, but I'm rolling with it. I had a lot of the same concerns, or should I say criticisms, regarding theater as Aqua did, and so while I am not completely convinced yet, I will say it did pique my interest to one day go watch one of these plays. So I don't know if I will ever visit Japan during my life, I sure hope so, but if I do, knowing myself, going to a wrestling show will be way higher in the list of priorities, but if I do go to one of these 2.5D theater things, I will report back my findings. This scene does more than just explain to dummies like me what our main characters are actually rehearsing for, it also shows Akane and her passion and how she's trying to share it with Aqua. Seeing this version of Akane is a great contrast to when she started off. It's beyond obvious by now that she was not necessarily a bad person or even particularly socially awkward, she was just in the wrong setting. Reality shows are not her cup of tea, theater is her cup of tea, and she's slurping all of it. Having Akane be able to come out and display her personality and her passions is also super refreshing for her character, because initially she had to cop out of her situation by pretending to be I, which from a reality show standpoint in the scope of the story makes sense. It proves a point that those reality shows are super fake and also gets her character across as being able to emulate other people's personalities. However, from a character growth standpoint, it felt a bit of a cop-out. And speaking of cop-outs, Akane is absolutely one of my favorite characters in this show. I like her a lot. And yet, I still think the more powerful narrative decision would be to remove her from play back in season 1, but this is something that's perhaps a little bit controversial and not a conversation for today. Moving on, we get a behind-the-scenes look at the relationship between editors and mangaka, which is, I will say, not super surprising, but still relatively educational. The running gag of the absolute apathy the author feels towards Melt is super funny and also very realistic. If I associated your face with the butchering of my beloved work, then yeah, I would also feel a little bit of resentment. We also see the two very different appeals of our two main love interests. We see Kana with her very cute bow tie because she's just so cute, and then we see Akane and she's on a leash. Just stop it, stop. Finally, we move on to the final scene between Abiko and Yoriko-Sensei, and I was giddy when I realized they were adapting this scene in this episode. This is one of my favorite scenes in the manga, and it caught me by surprise because it didn't really involve any of the main characters, but it's so well executed that it's just hard for me not to love it. There's this constant tension between student and teacher because the student has now arguably surpassed, or at least in terms of commercial success, surpassed the teacher, and so Yoriko-sensei will inevitably feel a little bit bitter or a bit of resentment, and it's only human to feel so. We are not, enlightened, perfectly humble beings. It's a normal human emotion to have. And so when that undeniable fact is shoved in her face during this scene, you can almost hear the ooh from the audience. And you would expect Yoriko-Sensei, who's a bit of an agreeable pushover, to just take it on the chin, but instead she snaps back, and it's so entertaining because she does have a point. She comes out with valid criticism from both her students' work and her students' perhaps not easy to get along personality. I love these tense arguments between two characters where you can feel they're taking it a step too far, and yet at their core they still like each other. They feel very authentic and very human. Yes, Abiko may be successful, and yes, she may have the emotional intelligence of a rock, but despite being an author, she's also a fan, and she hated how her teacher's work turned out, and that's why she wants to avoid that for herself. They both have a point, and these are the best kinds of arguments. Abiko is very protective of her work because she wants it to be good and faithful to what she wrote, but at the same time she does have to learn to collaborate with others because she clearly can't do everything herself, as she's already at the absolute limit of her human capabilities. And Yoriko-Sensei has this sort of kind motherly vibe, which is why it's so refreshing and so surprising when she actually claps back. Sometimes you need mommy to give you a little tap on the cheek just so you know that you're misbehaving. And I love the absolute professionalism that even though they're mad and arguing at each other, they're still working at the same time. So this scene has so many layers and I love it so much. To me, it's one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. This adaptation has been gorgeous and it manages to elevate the source material even further, and to be clear, I already quite like the artwork of the source material. As a final note though, and one that perhaps I will one day make a video about when I structure my thoughts more clearly I guess, is I wish people would stop saying that Oshi No Ko is a criticism of the industry. I see a lot of these types of comments, especially on episodes like this, because they do show the somewhat nasty side of the behind the scenes. In this episode we see how overworked some mangaka are and how grueling their schedule is. As a side note, I think Yoriko-Sensei at one point said that mangaka that work on a weekly schedule are not human, which got a chuckle out of me. And I think that's one of the reasons why people, for example, don't really appreciate One Piece enough. I hope to be wrong, but I think it will be a very long time before we get even something close to the size and quality of One Piece that it delivered so consistently week after week for so many years. Not weekly nowadays, but you get my point. Back to the topic, Oshi No Ko does criticize many aspects of the entertainment industry. However, my main premise is that, in my opinion, you cannot criticize something while glorifying it at the same time, if that makes sense. There are multiple points in the story, even way back in season 1, the Akane situation is an example of that, where the series kind of stops halfway through and goes back into a all ends well type of fantasy. Yes, episode 1 was shocking, but this series gets cold feet multiple times, and to me the worst example of this is a scene with Kana in the manga, which I will not spoil, but manga readers will know what I'm talking about. Oshi No Ko always seems to show the dark side of the industry as more of a price to pay type of thing, and not necessarily something that should be eliminated. The vibe I get watching Oshi No Ko is not so much of, man, those poor idol girls, it's more of, idols are so cool and they go through so much. This show is more honest than most, but at the end of the day, it is still an idol show. And I think that when fans portray it as a teardown of the industry, I think it's very misleading for new viewers, and to me it's just not true. Once again, I may do a video just about this. I need to gather my thoughts and actually write some structured topics, and you know, that video will probably have a lot of nuance, which I know YouTube comments hate nuance, but for the one of you that likes nuance, this is for you. So, are you enjoying Oshi No Ko Season 2? Is Abiko a snack? Leave it in the comments below, like, subscribe, and ciao!